All right, guys, let's be real. Email freebies and random website banners are not cutting it anymore. Growing your email list and your bank account as a small business owner is more competitive than ever. People are not handing over their email or their hard-earned cash for something that doesn't feel valuable to them. And that's why you need Badao. And you can get 25% off your subscription with the code Elizabeth. So if you haven't heard of it yet, Badao is the ultimate software for supercharging your email list building efforts and making sure your website visitors see the right message at the right time. Badao works with all the best email marketing platforms like Flowdesk, ActiveCampaign, and Kit, you name it. And it was acquired and rebranded by Showit about 6 months ago, and I have been obsessed ever since. And honestly, if it's from Showit, you know it's going to be amazing. So here's a few ways I've been using Badao in my business so you get the picture. So showing a pop-up for a freebie only on my blog posts that are geared towards designers, displaying a coupon code to visitors right as they're leaving my site, promoting sales with the targeted pop-up for people coming from specific websites, and one of my new favorites, a feature of adding social proof pop-ups in the corner of a browser to show recent and real-time purchases or email signups. Badao makes it ridiculously easy to connect with your audience in a way that feels both personal and strategic. And seriously, I've had my mind blown by all the features like targeting new visitors differently than returning ones or popping up an offer after someone's browsed a certain number of pages. So here's the best part. Badao is offering 25% off for a limited time with the code Elizabeth. So this is the best deal you will find. And I'm so excited to share it with you because I know this will transform your business sales like it has mine. Head to elizabethmccravey.com/Badao. That's BDOW to snag this 25% off deal. Plus you'll find a free Badao template that I designed to help you get started. So again, save 25% with the code Elizabeth. And now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to the Breakthrough Brand Podcast. Okay, you guys are in for such a treat with this episode. We're covering a bunch of topics that I haven't really had a guest on to talk about on the show, going all over the place and really talking about what it's like to run a lifestyle business and travel and homeschool and all the things, which is so fun. I learned a lot in this conversation myself and left feeling really inspired. So I'm talking today with Emily Conley. She's a friend of mine who I've worked with for many years now in my own business. She's also been a customer. I've been a customer of hers, and she is just such a joy to learn from and to talk to. And this conversation feels really casual because this is the kind of stuff she and I talk about often when we are on calls together for work, but are like catching up on life. And so it's fun to get to like really pick her brain about some stuff a bit longer. So we're talking about losing your Instagram account after 4 years of building a business and then operating a business without social media, which was Emily's story. We talk about, can you build a business from the start without social media at all? Taking a year off to travel with your family while also running a business, homeschooling as a business owner and being an unlikely homeschooler and what that's looked like for Emily, what Emily's daily life has looked like, homeschooling, living somewhere else and still running her business and like what their family's schedule is like and everything like that. Advice for traveling as a family, homeschooling, running a business like VIP day style, and so much more. So we explore a lot of different topics here that are all related, but kind of go all over the place. And we get really granular too, and like exactly how she's doing these things and pulling it off and the hard things and the good things and all that. So anyway, I think you guys are going to really enjoy this conversation. Now, here's the episode. Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth McCravey, an online educator for entrepreneurs, website designer, wife, boy mom, and your host for the Breakthrough Brand Podcast, the show that's all about pulling back the curtain on how to actually build a successful business. I don't skim the surface around here. If you want to dive deep into the nitty-gritty details of what it takes to run a sustainable business that fits your unique lifestyle while standing out in a crowd, then you are in the right place. I created a multiple six-figure a year business in my early 20s, and now in my 30s, I'm still running that successful multiple six-figure a year business on just part-time hours now as a working mom. I'm here to share everything I've learned and everything I'm still learning because I believe that the keys to building a thriving business should never be a secret. Here you'll find episodes that are actionable, direct, and fun, like friends chatting business over coffee, and a fresh, honest take on the reality of being an entrepreneur. If you're ready to master online marketing, website design, personal branding, mindset, time management as a busy parent, scalable and passive income, and business strategy, then this is the podcast for you. It's time to build your breakthrough brand. Let's do this. All right, guys, I'm so excited. I wish we were together, Emily, right now because we're both in Nashville right now, which is cool. But today we're talking about business without social media, running a business while traveling the world, homeschooling, and some other stuff too. So, Emily, welcome back to the podcast. She was on episode 113, which was in April of 2021, which is a million years ago. I'm like, that's so long, but we've obviously stayed in touch a lot in all those years. And I always love catching up with you. And it's fun because so many of these questions are ones that I'm like, I have either asked you privately when we've been on Zoom calls together over since you've been doing your family gap year, or ones I've wanted to ask you but haven't. So everyone's going to get to hear all these fun questions. So anyway, for Emily, for those who have not met you yet, will you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your business and who you serve and what you've been up to in life?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me back. If you had asked me, I would have been like, oh, that was probably a year ago. So
I know. I feel that way too. Yes.
So I'm Emily Conley. My business is called Emily Writes Well, and I'm a copywriter. I'm mostly focused on websites, sales pages, and emails. And I work with all kinds of online business owners, even some I've done a little bit of brick and mortar business, but mostly online business owners, coaches, service providers, creatives, all of that good stuff. Anytime you need clear, compelling copy that connects with and attracts your dream clients, that's where I shine.
Okay, so I think the first time we worked together, was it 2020, our first time working together, or before then?
It was 2020,
for Black Friday?
And it was Black Friday of 2020.
Yeah, and we've been working together since for launches and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's wild. I know. I think this last Black Friday was the fifth one.
Maybe fifth? Yeah, or fifth. That's
Math
right.
isn't my...
I know. Yes. Well, we've been working together so Emily's written a lot of my emails is the point for launches and Black Friday every year, which is just, so fun. You're so talented. And I feel like this is going to be a fun interview because in April, when you came on in 2021, we were talking about copywriting. We're actually not talking about copywriting today. We're talking about more lifestyle things and behind the scenes of running a successful business without using social media now for you, which we're going to start with. And then also while homeschooling and traveling, and you're just in Nashville right now for just 6 weeks, which is cool. And then going back on the road. But let's start with business without social media. Okay. So I remember literally still when this happened, it feels like it wasn't even as long ago as it was, but your Instagram was hacked and completely removed my Meta in July of 2023. So a while ago now. So can you tell us what happened? Because that's every business owner's worst nightmare in a lot of ways of just losing your Instagram, your business Instagram. So tell us what happened.
It really was a nightmare. So, and I thought I was living, okay, let me just set the stage because this is good. So I'm flying back from Madrid to Nashville. And we had splurged on business class upgrade. So I'm in this pod. I am feeling so hot. We never do things like that. So I was feeling so cool. And I was I'll just do a little ask me anything on Instagram from my business class flight, right? Feeling such a legit business owner.
Yeah.
And so I'm answering questions and then I get a white screen and I just got locked out. And it was you've been logged out. And so I went to log back in and it gave me an error message. I don't even remember what it was now. It was you've done something and it's done and it's gone and you can appeal it. So I appealed through, so it's all forms online. So I appealed and they sent me an email 2 days later and they said, basically, oh my gosh, we're so sorry. That was an accident. You didn't violate anything. We've restored your account. Let us know if you have any problems. And I could never log back in ever. I went to go log back in and it gave me the same error. And there's no way to contact. You're at the mercy of a chat bot and email and forms. I submitted the appeal form maybe 60 times. I don't know. And I could never, I tried for weeks and I could never get it back. So then it was gone.
Yeah. And at that point you had your account how many years?
Four-ish.
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah. And so you had a lot of posts, well over 100, I'm sure, right?
Oh yeah. So that was the biggest, I was never a huge Instagram person. So I think I had about 3,000 followers. So it wasn't a massive account.
A thing to point out though, is I feel when I think about your Instagram, you were using it to get clients. So it wasn't having a smaller following doesn't mean that it wasn't helping you.
Yeah, it was 80% of my business came from Instagram. So it was not just my main, it was almost my only driver of traffic. I was doing other things, but that's where everyone was coming in from. And I had a really, really strong community. I was always on stories. Like there was so much content. I mean, I had things I had poured hours and time and energy, creative energy into creating. And I was the saddest about losing my content because it was all gone. And so it was really sad. I had really put a lot of time and effort into it. So it was a huge bummer. I didn't know what was going to happen. Like I wasn't sure I was going to have a business.
Yeah. So what would you say was the next, like, because I know you ended up making other accounts and still trying to use it for your business. So like, what was your initial reaction and then ultimately what you ended up doing?
Yeah. So initially I was just like horrified. And I was like, well, the two things that really helped me is that I had built a really strong community on Instagram where people had other, like, I was on Voxer with those people, or they had emailed me, or like they had other ways of contacting me. And so a lot of people reached out and were like, what happened?
Yeah.
Where are you? Which was nice, but I still had referrals. So I was able to, tell people. But my email list, I had built my email list over time, and my email list was bigger than my Instagram audience, which was great. And so I still had that. So I just leaned really heavily into email marketing, and I told everyone, hey, here's what happened. I'm still in business. Like, let's do this. And then I ended up creating a second account, Emily Wrightswell 2.0, a couple months later, and then it got deleted after like 6 months. So then I was
it's for copyright issues, right? Violating trademark.
Violating trademark. And I don't know if it was like, I don't know. I just got like a bunch of warnings, and it was like, you're violating trademark. And I had posted the picture that they said it about was like a picture of my computer where I had written a story about working with a client. And then so then it was gone.
And then in November of last year, you got your handle back, your original handle.
Yeah, so it had been long enough, and my original name came back on the market. And so I picked it up, and I think I've maybe posted like 3 times, and I'm still not sure. The real reason I wanted to have an Instagram was because I do a lot of collaborations, and I work with a lot of people who couldn't tag me in projects we were doing. And so I was like, I really want to have that accessibility. Like, I love getting introduced to other people's audiences through work that we've done. Because typically, if it's someone I've worked with, then their audience a lot of times has people that I would like to work with. And so that I was missing out on that. So I haven't really decided. I've contemplated doing like, one of those 9 grids where you just kind of like put it up and leave it. And then just showing up in stories. But I haven't totally decided. I have it, and I made it with a completely new email. So I made a new Gmail account that was not associated with any of my business email stuff, to try to be like, I don't know if I'm blacklisted.
Really. Know. Well, and I feel like your story is a good testimony to the power of email marketing, which I get tired of people talking about, but it is a good example of that like it's, like I remember getting the email that explained what happened to your account. I actually tried to find it, and I couldn't find it in my inbox. Like right before we started recording, I was like, I'm going to try to find, so I can write the right keywords in here to find Emily's old email about this. But it's like having that community that was bigger than your email list and like ready to like hear from you in that way. That's more intimate and more likely to be seen and things like that. But so you haven't been using Instagram though now for a while to market your business, but you just had your highest revenue year yet last year. So we're recording this now in 2025. Y'all are hearing anything but last year, Emily had her biggest revenue year, while also doing so much other stuff like traveling the world and homeschooling, which we're going to get into. But what would you say like attributed to that when you think about not being on social media for your marketing?
Yeah, it's really the referral network I have built. So at this point, over half of my clients from last year were repeat clients. So they were people that I had worked with before. And then the rest, I like 10 or 20% comes from my website, just
SEO, just finding you Google.
Organic search.
Organic.
I was like, there's a word for this. So like 10 or 20% comes from organic search through my website, just kind of the traditional route. And then everything else is referrals, and then people who are connected to my referral network. So that was huge. And so I did not market my business last year really at all, which I wouldn't recommend for it's not a great strategy, but I was able to have my highest revenue year without marketing while doing all these crazy things. And there just really wasn't time. It wasn't a necessity. Moving forward, this year, I have a very different strategy, and there's a lot of marketing things that are happening outside of Instagram. And so we'll see how that kind of like shifts things. But I was able to make it work for a year. I don't think it's a long-term strategy, but
yeah, and it's all about, I feel like that's even a good way to phrase it, but it's about your priorities in that season. Like your priority last year was doing this travel stuff,
yes.
which I know you'll still be doing, but like that was like a big thing for you versus like really just getting your business to be like as big as it could be or whatever. So I know you and I both already talked about this a little bit on our own, and we both thought this was like a question a lot of people might be thinking. I know I would be wondering this, but like, do you think, like, you know, you've done it right now without having Instagram, for a new business owner who maybe is doing something similar to you as a service provider, maybe they're a copywriter as well, do you think they could do it without using social media at all, or what would you recommend there from your own experience?
I think it's such a good question because it's real life, right? So that was 5 years. I was able to not use Instagram and not market after 5 years of very intentional building. I would not have had a referral network without Instagram. Yeah. Almost all of those people. Now, one of my like best referral like clients, I met at an in-person networking event. So that can happen. You absolutely can make like real good, real meaningful connections outside of Instagram. But by and large, almost all of those people I met through Instagram. I developed relationships with through Instagram. I built my authority. They trusted me. And so I would say like, I could not have started and done what I did, but I was able to because of the time I had put in. So if you're starting and you're newer and you're like, I hate Instagram, which I've never been a huge Instagram person, to be totally fair. I had an account for 4 years and only had 3,000 followers. Clearly I wasn't putting like a ton of, right? And so my advice would honestly be to just stick it out and find your people, put in the time and focus more on building community than like any kind of metrics or, going viral or anything like that, and really finding and connecting with your people. Because if you do that while simultaneously building an email list, you can step away from Instagram. It will be an option, but I would say it's just the best free marketing tool that I have found in the online space. Like there's not anything that really competes with it for building a presence, getting to know people, finding a community. Like a lot of the networking and a lot of the in-person things I've done I've found through Instagram. So they've extended, right, and become meaningful, like real life connections. But yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do it if I hadn't built a foundation there first.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And for like a business owner who maybe they've had their business a little while or a long while, but they're feeling like I'm kind of over Instagram, over TikTok. I don't really want to, I'm not trying to delete my account or lose it to Meta, but I'm not wanting to put as much energy into this. What advice would you give them around that?
Yeah, just do it. Just do it. Just step away. There is such a freedom in not having that. And if you have and I would be more intentional. So if you don't have it snatched away from you, right? Just like, and you don't have to tell people you're taking a break. You can.
Yes. Yeah. I like not telling people.
Just no one, you don't know. You don't have to tell people. Like it's fine. And you can just take a break. And I think even just like doing that for even a week out of the month, like trying it. Like I think one thing I've learned in this past year is that like you don't have to commit to something forever. So you can just try something out and see how it goes, and you are not committed. You can come back, especially if you don't tell people. If you don't make a big announcement about leaving, say you walk away and you're like, oh, actually, I really miss it. I want to go back in 5 days. Yeah. Great, go back. Yeah. So you're not, none of these decisions are forever. And I think sometimes that can be really hard to make something that feels scary, like a big change, because it feels like you're deciding for the rest of your life, but you're not.
That's been such a huge thing for me this past year in business and looking in 2025, have another baby. I'm like, it's not, everything is like a season and nothing has to be forever when you make changes in your business. Yeah. I think it's so true. And I think not announcing or making like a big ordeal out of something helps you have more freedom. Like you can make a thing about it to your family or your friends, but like you don't have to like, it's like tell everyone you're doing a diet. It's like, just maybe just don't, you have to tell everyone. You just tell them only some people, that sort of thing. You know what I mean? I feel like that's, I love all that. So that's fun hearing about all of your social media changes and the things. So I want to hear too more in a little bit about your work schedule and like how you pulled off that highest revenue year. Cause I think it's going to be super interesting, especially as a service provider
without having like tons of passive income. But we're going to pivot first and talk a little bit about your life in this current season. So you're taking a family gap year, and I think it's been longer than a year. I don't know. You're going to have to explain some of that to me. It might not be, but we'll talk about that. Homeschooling and traveling right now. So what inspired you to take the family gap year and homeschool while traveling?
Interrupting this episode with a suggestion for the small business owners listening. Ever wonder what you should do for healthcare when you and your spouse are both self-employed, so there's no work-provided health insurance to participate in? Well, when my husband Adam joined me in the entrepreneurial job space over 4 years ago, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries instead of getting traditional health insurance. And it was the best decision for us, especially in these years of growing and raising a family while also running multiple businesses. CHM is a health cost-sharing ministry and is a faith-based alternative to health insurance. We did tons of research before choosing CHM, and if you know me and Adam, you know we are all about doing the math when making big or small financial decisions. And even though it's not insurance, CHM shares 100% of eligible medical bills, which is more than the typical 70 or 80% of medical bills paid for by insurance companies. All sharing is determined by the CHM guidelines, which you can check out before and after joining. And for the mamas and mamas to be listening, you truly cannot find a better healthcare option for maternity care. I had a vaginal delivery and a C-section and birth center care and hospital care between my 2 pregnancies and births, and it was all 100% shared for. And outside of birth, we've had our share of emergency room visits and procedures as a family, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. CHM is less expensive month to month than insurance, and because there's no network, you can choose your care with whichever providers best fit your family. I seriously just cannot recommend Christian Healthcare Ministries enough. You've got to check them out. Go to elizabethmccravey.com/CHM for more information. Also putting that link in the show notes, elizabethmccravey.com/CHM. Now back to the episode.
So my husband and I used to live in Australia. So my daughter was actually born while we were living in Sydney. So we have had experience, right, being in like another country. And we moved back after she was born, that because having a newborn 10,000 miles away from anyone who can help you is really hard. So we moved back when she was 10 weeks old. And so we've been in the Nashville area since then. So for 6 years. And we were just really feeling, we tried to move back to Sydney through my husband's job, and we got really close, like sold my car. We were listing our house, and then his company dropped like a global hiring freeze. And so that fell apart at like the last minute. And so we're like, well, this isn't going to happen. We didn't want to like do something permanent because we couldn't pick a place. We were like, we don't know. Like there's, visas and all that stuff is very complicated. So I was like, well, what if we just went to different places and like slow traveled? And so spent like a month or 2 months, and tried out some different places and just kind of like used this as an opportunity. Our daughter is 6, so she was starting first grade. So I was like, it's a perfect time because she's still really young, like she's not beholden to her friends and stuff. And so at first we were kind of like, well, the big thing was my husband's job. So my husband had an in-person job with a big company. And so he couldn't do it. Like he couldn't make it work. There wasn't, even though he was working remotely at the time, they were like starting to talk about like back to office, and it was changing. And we were like, this isn't a long term. And even like it wouldn't legally, he couldn't be, just hanging out in another country for months. So that was the big sticking point. And so when he finally realized like, hey, I can walk away from this, like I can let this go and we can see, then it kind of opened up our options. So
yeah. That's awesome. And
yeah.
okay, tell us how long you were gone for. I know you're back right now. But yeah, how long were you gone for? And I know you went to a lot of different, you started in Costa Rica, is that right? Correctly? Okay.
Yeah.
Where else did you go? How long were you gone?
Yeah. So we were on the road for 6 months, like exactly. And then we came back for the holidays to spend time with family. So we've been here for 6 weeks. And then later this week, we're leaving for so we have the next 6 months planned. So we have through June.
Cool.
So we started in Costa Rica, and that was easy because the time zones were the same. So I didn't have to change anything with work. And we stayed in a condo on the beach. It was beautiful. We had a pool. it was a little bit more rustic than I think we were planning on. And actually one thing that's really surprising is that Costa Rica is incredibly expensive when it comes to like cost of living. Groceries were more expensive in Costa Rica than they are in Nashville.
Wow.
Which are like, we were spending more on grocery, which was wild because groceries here feel like they're so expensive.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting. And like restaurants, I expected to be like very cheap, and they weren't. Like things were pretty much like Nashville prices or higher, which was really surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, sometimes the road, you would be driving on a road and then it would no longer be a road. It would just be this like dirt path. And then you were driving through a river, like legitimately driving through a river. And so, but it was an adventure. It was different than I was expecting, but it was a really good starting place. So we started with 2 months there, and then we flew down to Colombia, then Colombia to London. So that was like a long flight. And we met my parents and we did like a little road trip through the UK with them, which was really fun.
Yeah.
And then after that, we went to Greece. So we stayed on a little island. Well, it's actually a big island, Naxos in Greece. We stayed there for 5 or 6 weeks. And then we went to Spain. So we stayed in Valencia, Spain. We were actually there when they had like a massive flood. And it was like being somewhere else, like in another country when it's a natural disaster. That was very, we learned a lot. That was very eye-opening. But we were fine. So that was, we were all safe. And then we ended with a few weeks in Morocco. So we were in Marrakesh for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think last time we talked, that's where you were. And it was like nighttime for you, but like midday or something for me. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so did you have to make any major shifts, like selling a home, selling cars, and things like that in order to do this?
Yes. So we kept our house. So we rented our house. We found like a long-term renter for our home.
And real quick, do you feel like that was hard to find someone that fit the bill for that? Or was it easy? Okay, cool.
Well, we hired our realtor. So our realtor also manages properties. And we're like very good friends with him, and he's amazing. And so he kind of ran that whole process. But I think we had six different like couples, families come look at the house. And then this person was like the best fit overall. And so that's been, touch wood, that's been really easy. We haven't had any like.
Did you leave your furniture? Like, or completely empty?
So almost completely empty. So we sold most of our, so we sold most of our furniture, which most of it I felt okay about. So a couple of things I loved our couches. But we sold some things to the renter. So like we sold our washer and dryer. We didn't want to like be responsible. If the washer breaks, I don't want to be responsible for that. But also you don't have to move in a new one. You can just have these. So we sold that and some of our outdoor patio furniture and like bar stools. So a little bit of the furniture stayed. Most of it we sold on Marketplace. My husband did that. That was like a full-time job.
I bet.
It was wild. Yeah. We sold our cars, both of our cars. And then my husband quit his job. That was a huge thing because that's that was our health insurance. So he had benefits through his job. He'd been at the company for 13 years. So that was a big one that felt really, really scary until he did it. And then it was kind of like, oh, we're fine. Like, this is okay.
Yeah, and that's a lot. Did you have a storage unit, or was it really like nothing you kept?
We have a small storage unit.
Okay.
Yeah, that's like 8 by 10 that has like our Christmas ornaments and some of my daughter's toys. Like we didn't get rid of her Barbie dream house and a lot of her toys. And then like my better cookware I kept, things that I felt like I could easily like move.
Yeah, that's such a big, like, that would feel scary. Obviously, I'm really doing this. We don't have cars right now. It's like, that's so like going all in. What would you say was the biggest like mindset shift or challenge in like making it happen? Because I remember like one of our copywriting calls were like in the early phases of like talking about how I think we're going to do this. Like, I think we're going to try to rent the house, and like, it is just like, but it's a process. Like, I'm sure that took y'all a while to like make all that happen. So like, what were some mindset shifts and things you had to do?
Oh, so many. It was a long process. So we started probably a year before we actually left. Kind of like we knew about it. My husband and I, we didn't tell anybody for like until further in the process. But we started doing that. I think the biggest shift is the thing I kind of mentioned before of like, you don't have to commit to something forever. So for us, and I think choosing to rent our house instead of selling it made it feel so much less permanent, right? And we've done it before. I mean, so when we moved to Sydney, we were new, like we'd been married for 18 months. We had built a brand new house when we built a house and planned a wedding at the same time. I don't recommend. We like closed the week of our wedding. That was wild. And so we had only been in that, like we had built this house, it was our perfect little starter home. And then we sold all of that. So we had done that. We had done all the selling and the moving. But yeah, I think it was just saying this is just a season and letting go of things. So this house we had built as well. So we were the only people who had lived there. And I had picked out all the things, and designed it. And it's a great house. And so I think like letting go of finding my stability in a physical, like in our house, I had to decide like the three of us together, like that's home. And so as long as the three of us are together, wherever we are, we can have stability. I think that was my big fear, because I was like, on paper, it kind of looks like I'm yanking. I mean, when my daughter was doing beautiful, and she was in a magnet school that you have to like test into. It's really hard to get into. She got into it, and then we kind of like pulled her out of it because we knew if we left, she probably isn't going to be able to like go back. But we weren't really planning on returning to the community we were living in. So it was kind of like, it's okay. But yeah, I think like the stability issue was hard for me as a mom to be like, am I wrecking my kid? All of that, and being like, you know what, we're just going to see. And I think the whole time we've been really intentional about checking in, and we did this leading up to leaving, and we've continued to do it of like, how's everybody doing? How are we feeling? And, if at any point any one of us is like miserable, we can make changes. We can do things differently.
Well, that's such a theme of our conversation, is that nothing has to be like permanent in your life and business decision making. Yeah, I think and that's so much stuff to have to like think through and work through. So yeah, Charlotte had a year, I guess, of school, just like traditional schooling. Now she's homeschooled. Did you ever see yourself homeschooling, or was that like something you ever thought about? Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So what, like, I know a lot of moms listening are like, I'd love to homeschool, maybe because they're also like you, and they're like, oh, I want to travel with my family, therefore homeschooling makes sense. Or they just like want that more like flexible lifestyle and having their kids home. I would just love to hear your experience with homeschooling, like, and also like structuring it while traveling.
Yes. Okay. So I was a teacher. That was my first job out of college. I didn't go to college to be a teacher. I did like a non-traditional program to become a teacher, but I've taught kindergarten and first grade. So I was like, professionally, I get it. I know how to structure a curriculum. I know how to, do objectives. Like, it's, to be perfectly honest, that part of it isn't too hard. Anybody can do that. But so I was like, I can do that, but I never had any desire to. I have a very strong-willed child, and like I like that she goes off to school and someone else deals with her for semesters, right? Like I like that, but it's so much harder. Okay, so I was a professional, so I was like, this isn't going to be that hard. It's hard, and it's a lot more time-consuming than I expected. But I've had to shift from like only considering school, sitting down face-to-face, like working in a workbook, doing an in-person lesson. Like, to me, that was school. But I've had to really broaden that and realize, like, so for example, when we were in Valencia, we went to the aquarium. I was trying to think of how they say it, but they call it something cool, but we'll call it the aquarium. And we spent the whole day. And my daughter's obsessed with sharks. And so they have this huge shark room, and she read like every plaque that had to do with sharks. And then we sat on this bench and we talked about like, we identified like all these different sharks. And then she was like teaching us facts about them that she had like just learned. And then, we did this whole immersive day. And then when we got home, I was like, okay, well, we got to sit down and do school. And then I was like, wait, no, we just did. That was 4 hours of like, real experience. And so like, especially where we've been, so like when we were in Greece, in Naxos, like when you come into the port, there's this like 2,000+ year old arch that's standing from, it's like the Temple of Apollo or something, and it's super, super old, and you can walk up to it. And so like, one day we like went on a little hike up to it, and we learned all about that. And Charlotte got really into Greek mythology, so then she was reading these books about Greek mythology, and then we went to the archaeology museum. And so like there's things that aren't sit down textbook, but are actually like more immersive and better. And so I've had to realize like, this is also school.
Yeah.
So
That is a big shift from how because when you send your kid off to school, it is like sitting there versus what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. You said it's more time consuming than you thought. I'd love to hear more about that because I feel like whenever I typically hear people, because so I've thought about homeschooling, just throwing that out there, but I don't know that I will. I have years to decide that, but I feel like a big hesitation for me was like, well, I have a business, other kids, like how am I supposed to do that and this? But then people say homeschooling is not as much time as like a school day. But then you're saying so like, can you talk about that? So like how much time you're spending on it versus doing all the other things you do?
Yes. So yes, homeschooling is not as much because like legally it's 4 hours a day. So that's because like in school, I mean, I think that's generous. I don't think you spend 4 hours learning in a regular school, but like you technically, because it's like a lot of transitions, right? And like all this other stuff that you're doing. But 4 hours of like instruction is what in Tennessee, I don't know, everywhere else, that's what you're legally like required to do. So it's not as much like actual time as a regular school day. I chose not to purchase a curriculum. And so I'm planning. And so I think if you bought a curriculum and followed it, it would be a lot less time because what I'm doing is like, so part of the problem is, well, it's not a problem. Part of the situation, my daughter's just pretty, like she's about to finish 3rd grade math and she's supposed to be in 1st grade. So she's like pretty advanced. She loves math. She loves math and reading actually. And so for me, I've used it as an opportunity to really narrow down. So like I spent a lot of time like having her take placement tests so I could really see where she was. So I'm not teaching her things she already has mastered. And so that's, I think, where a lot of the time comes in.
Yeah.
So I think if you started from the beginning, like if I had started homeschooling her in kindergarten, I would have known all that stuff. And like we would have been, I probably could have like followed a curriculum. That was just a personal choice. I chose not to like buy something just because one, like I didn't want to carry a bunch of books around. Like, we're traveling around. But two, I really wanted to be able to customize it to her. And she's on different levels and everything. So, in regular school, you're going to get like teaching to the middle, which is what you have to do. So I was like, well, if we're going to do this, we might as well. But the other thing is with time and business, her dad teaches her math. So he does all of her math and we use Khan Academy for that. And it's amazing. It's free, which is wild. And so he does a lot of that instruction because I really don't have the time. Like I don't have 4 full hours plus what I'm doing for work because I've been working quite a bit.
Yeah, that's cool. And that's cool. You are doing your own curriculum. That's like, I feel like some people could find that enjoyable, especially with your teaching background. And you do like teaching in your business too. Like you might have kind of like a natural like teaching heart, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I know every day is so different when you are traveling, but could you kind of share while you have been in all these other countries and places, what a typical day has looked like between homeschooling and exploring and work for you?
Yes. So one thing that's been kind of interesting is we've spent a lot of time in Europe. And so the time zone has been, right, we're like anywhere from 6 to 7 or 8 hours ahead, depending on where we've been. And so it's actually really nice. So we wake up at like 9. So we sleep in. We have very slow mornings. So we wake up, no alarms, just like.
So she'll sleep till 9?
Well, she doesn't go to bed till like midnight. So
my gosh. I'm like, I've never seen 9 a.m. with either of my children.
No. So yes. Well, so her whole life was like 7:30 p.m. bedtime up at like 6.
Yeah.
Her whole life. And so we have adjusted. And
that's cool.
Yeah. So we like slow mornings, get up, have coffee, like to go for a walk if we can, like just kind of go. And some places we would go to the playground in the morning, but like in Greece, we found that no one was on the playground at all until like 9 p.m. or 8. It was like 8. So then from like 8 to like 11 p.m. the playground was packed. Yeah.
So it was so like weird. Dark outside though?
Yeah. Pitch black. Yeah. But then they would have like lights, but yes, everyone would be out. Even when school started, like the kids were there until like 10. It was, very interesting. So then we do school in the morning. So we try to do like either ELA or math. And then we all have lunch together. And we found that lunch became kind of our big meal of the day. So like I would cook like a full meal because I wasn't working yet. So this is all like happening right before. And so then after lunch, Charlotte would do her other, either math or ELA, like whatever she hadn't done. So another block of school. And then she and her dad would typically go out and like do something. So like when we were in Greece, we were 8 minutes from the beach. They would normally just go to the beach and play. And then I would work from like 3. I would start taking calls about 3 p.m. was like when people were starting to be awake in the US. And so then I would work from like 3 until 11-ish, with taking like a break for dinner. But for dinner, we normally would just do like salad or a soup or a sandwich, like something really small and simple, kind of like what we normally would do for lunch. So we kind of flipped those, except for the weekends. Then we kind of go out. And so we would mostly eat at home. So we stay in Airbnbs, right? So you have a full kitchen, like really treat it. I think that's a big misconception, is everyone thinks like, oh, you're on vacation. And it's like, oh no, it's very mundane. Like it is just normal life.
Yeah.
So that's like a normal day, right? And then when we were in Greece, Charlotte would go out to the playground. When we were in Spain, she went to forest school 2 days a week, which was really fun.
Cool.
And so Donnie, my husband, would take her in the mornings, and she would spend all day in the forest, doing, I don't know, hammering, building stuff.
Interesting.
It was really cool. Yeah. And she liked having that. And she was there for 7 hours. Like they would be outside all day, no matter the weather, for like 7 hours a day. And so that was kind of nice too, because then I could just, work during that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's mostly what it would look like family time, lunch, a little outing in the morning and early afternoon. And then I would work most of the evening. And so Charlotte and Donnie would do whatever, they would play Mario Kart and kind of just do normal stuff. And then we all would go to bed about midnight, which was...
Yeah, so I know people stay up
so
later
different.
there. So that's like I know it's like culturally a thing. So I know it does feel like such a different schedule.
Yes, absolutely.
And we didn't share this, but I feel like it'd be helpful for people. What has Donnie's work been since y'all started traveling? I know we say that he quit his job. That was like a corporate job. He had been at a long time. So what's he doing now?
Yeah, so he is doing a couple of things. So he actually started his own Google Ads, PPC marketing business. So he has clients through there. So he has a handful of clients. He's starting that. And the second, as we move forward, he's going to be putting a lot more time into that. But for the beginning, it was really nice. So he could have some clients, start building it. But he's been working in the back end of my business a lot, which has been really nice. So he's been trying to set up, you mentioned before, being a service provider and not having passive income. That's something I'm trying to change. And so he's been working on that in the background. And then also, he does all the grocery shopping and all the just household things, and is mostly in charge of Charlotte. Yeah, so he's kind of like a stay-at-home dad, which he's loved. It's been really fun. And he's
cool.
So it's also nice because Charlotte and Donnie have gotten to create a new bond that they kind of didn't have before. Because I stayed home with Charlotte until she was, in pre-K. And so we had that time together. So it's kind of special for them to have that too.
That's really special. Yeah. I feel like people are going to love it. You just gave so much detail to everything, which I appreciate. But to wrap up this part about homeschooling, then we're going to talk more about your business side. But what would you say has been the most rewarding part of traveling and homeschooling and having your sweet family together all the time? I think that sounds so special. What would you say has been the most rewarding part of it all?
It's really seeing the learning process happen. So with young children specifically, they just are little sponges. And so to really see what Charlotte and I love, so we'll go do an activity, all three of us, and then we'll talk about it later. And I love seeing what stood out to her, what she noticed, what she remembers. And kind of hearing, we keep a travel journal, kind of like a family. We do it all together. And so hearing her perspective is just, and seeing how much, she has learned so much, and it's just really cool to me to actually see the whole process happening. And just we were joking, we were we're making too many core memories. We can't, we can't hold on to them all. It's been really, really special. It's an unbelievable opportunity that I'm just really grateful to have. So but just and then seeing her little sense of humor too. My husband and I are both really sarcastic. My husband's really funny. I think I'm funny. And so her sense of humor has really sharpened and developed, which is hilarious.
So what, for anyone listening who's I'd love to travel with my family and I have a business, is there any as we kind of leave this topic, like advice you would give them maybe that you wish you knew when you first started this journey?
I mean, I think it's just like it's a lot more accessible than it might feel. It's really not like I have found where I've had full days where I feel like I've been on vacation with my family and also worked a full day. And like, you can do both. You really can. And I think before I was very like specific, like when I went on vacation, I wouldn't take my laptop. I would be like, this is a break, right? Like I'm taking a break from this. And so I think shifting that and realizing like, this is just every day. And even if you went for a week, or you wanted to do like, I think doing like a month kind of, especially if it's like in the summer and you can do it, I think even just having a month is so special because it's very different. You're just in a different place. You show up differently. We've found we're a lot nicer to each other because we kind of like need each other. But anyway, but for the business part of it, it really is like, and like I am a service provider. Like I make all of my money, like doing work, working for people. And I have found that it's just a lot more flexible. You kind of can have both. Like the travel, adventure, and working. We've made it work.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like you're inspiring me because we even saying like, yeah, it could be a month. It doesn't have to be as long as you guys are doing. I think that's awesome. So let's talk about your business and like what's looked like working on the go. First, like, can you share for people who don't know what exactly you do in your business? I know what you do, but like explain like what a typical, like if you are like, I'm sitting down to work on stuff, because I know you already shared that like you're working in the afternoon to evening typically. Like, what are you working on?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'm writing things, right? So like, well, actually, while I was in Costa Rica, with one of my clients, I ghost wrote a book with her, which was not my usual thing. I've never done that before. And it was the most magical. Like the best project. Yeah. The book's called Identity Marketing. It came out this week, so you can check it out if you want. But so that was like me, like sitting on the balcony writing. And so we would have calls. She would download all this stuff, like give me a bunch of notes, and then I would kind of like put it into Word form, and then we'd go back and forth. I would kind of like get it started, right, and then send it over. And that was a very collaborative process. Usually, I am like writing emails, writing a website, writing a sales page. And that typically involves sitting down with a client on like a 45-minute to an hour and a half phone call to talk through all the details of their project, all the, their brand voice, all that stuff, if it's not someone I've worked with before. And then after that call, just getting deep into it. I focus on like one project at a time. So, I might be writing, if it's a website, that's going to be more than a day, but a sales page or an email campaign, that's going to be what I'm doing that day.
Yeah. Okay. I'd love to talk about that some because you do, correct me if I'm wrong on this, because this is how I feel like I've always experienced it with you, but you call them like VIP days and half VIP days. Are you still calling? Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah. So I kept the pricing model of that because it worked really well. It's just like a flat rate and it makes sense, but I actually don't do it in a day anymore. Just because like it's not totally feasible with how my life works. And so instead I will just set a deadline. And so typically it'll be like a week. Okay. Usually I am still doing a lot of it in a day, but I need just a little bit more space because used to Charlotte went to school for 7 hours. So I could happily make that happen. And this time it's a little bit more broken up. So yeah, I still call it that, but we are more like deadline-based projects.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that for a minute though, because I know a lot of people, designers, especially listening, other copywriters do that structure of like, do the VIP day structure, which I mean, at least from my experience working with you, it's always, like you said, we might do like the call on a different day, but then I think of it as like, you're telling me you're going to have the copy to me by this day. And it's really nice from a client perspective because I'm like, okay, I know this is the day I'm just going to be working on it ish, maybe, but we usually don't even talk on the days you're working. You just kind of you do your thing and then get it to me. But like, how does that structurally work for you in traveling and like even from a marketing perspective with VIP days?
Yeah, so I would say the challenge is scheduling the calls. So if I've worked with someone before, we'll try to like Voxer or Loom, do some kind of like asynchronous thing just because it's easier. But if people have flexibility, like they can, we're going like to Australia and Malaysia and Southeast Asia. So the time zone is going to be, I don't know how to answer that for that. I haven't figured that part out yet.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I would say the hardest part is just figuring out, like, linking up times and then just setting realistic boundaries. So something I had to learn was, like, I love a fast turnaround. You've worked with me. Usually it's like a couple, like maybe 2 days. And so for me, I had to, like, lengthen things and give myself, just because more things pop up, right? Like, it's a lot less of my kid goes to school. I mean, life happens all the time, but it's a lot more spontaneous, I guess. And we have, like, travel days sprinkled in, right? So then I have to account for that. Like, I'm not actually working a full week. I'm going to be flying on Thursday. So I'm, not actually working. So I think being realistic with timelines, I have found, as long as I set proper expectations with my clients, they have no problem with it. But I think where the problem comes in, at first I would be like, oh yeah, I'll have this to you tomorrow. And then it would be like, it's going to be Friday. It's going to be Monday. And so then it starts to feel like you're being, like, flaky or like letting people down, which I hate. So yeah, I think for anyone doing it, it's just like giving yourself time to figure it out, and then just honestly communicating with, like, I tell all my clients, if anyone new comes to me, I'm like, hey, just so you know, I am trying, like, here's my situation. And I've had people who are like, I don't feel comfortable, right? Like, they want more stability, and that's totally fine. Like, that does not hurt my feelings at all. So I think just being really clear up front and giving yourself time.
Yeah, that's great advice. And with how much, like, I know you again, you said, like, you got to be flexible because you don't know, like, you're about to go to Australia. Like, what is that even you're going to figure it out kind of when you get there, sort of thing.
Yes.
I'm sure you've had a lot of that. Do you feel like you are using your calendar a lot, or no? Like, like, when you think about, tell us about that, like, calendaring your life when you're changing time zones and stuff. Even
it's wild. So, like, I use Google Calendar, and so you can have 2 time zones. And so, like, I have my central time zone, and then I change it to whatever I'm in. Okay. And so that way I can, like, know when the windows are, because I don't know, I'll be like, oh, it's 9 p.m. where I am, but then it's 8 in the morning where you are. Anyway, so I do that. I block a ton. I've had to get really, really locked down on my calendar. Before I was kind of like a very go with the flow, like, oh, whatever, like, I have all this open time. And now I have, like, giant blocks where it's because people schedule. Also, like, I do one-on-one sessions with people where we, like, work together for 90 minutes, and people will just schedule they just have a link and they can just schedule them. And so I have to have everything blocked to where they can't schedule something. Basically, like, my whole calendar is just a dark spot until I get to Sydney and, like, figure out how to do it, because I don't know. And then, I think also one thing I'm trying to get better at is only taking calls on, like, 2 days instead of all the days, just because, and it could be late. Like, I would be doing a one-on-one session at 10 p.m. and, that goes till 11:30. And, like, even though I'm sleeping till not, even though I'm, like, sleeping at, like, you're still pretty, like, I'm not giving my best at that point. So figuring out, if I do this 1 day a week, I can do it. Like, I can have some afternoon coffee and, like, power through, but not doing that every day.
Yes, I think that's helpful, even not traveling. Like, I try to do that of, like, instead of, because right now I'll have, like, 2 work days with childcare for both children. And so it's like, I don't want to take meetings randomly throughout both those days, and you're not going to get anything else done. So instead of being like, on this day, I'm doing this meeting, and then another one, and then the other day I'm not doing that all day or whatever. Yeah, I think that's really good advice.
Well, and I think that's, like, such a good point too, though. Like, just quickly, like, I think the situation I found myself in has forced me to actually do so many of the best practices I've, like, known about but haven't had to do. So I've had to, like, get so streamlined with things, and, like, there's so much I used to waste time doing that, like, I can't. And so it really has forced me to be a more efficient business owner, which is a great, like, I think if you did this for a month with your business, and, like, even if you didn't go internationally, like, you just went somewhere else with your family, like, I think you would find, like, you become a better business owner because you have to.
Oh, I totally agree. Like, any kind of weird, like, changes in your life, even like adding a baby to your business can be that way. If like all of a sudden you're like, I got to figure out stuff differently. What are, I don't know if you'll be able to think this off the top of your head, so it's okay if you can't, but like, what are some things you said that there were things that you were wasting time on that now you're like, I can't do that. Can you think of any of those things that were time wasters for you, or things that you're like just doing more efficiently now?
Yeah, I think a big one is like bouncing around. So like I have retainer clients who like I do the same thing for every month. And I think a huge time waste before was I would be like, oh, I have like 15 minutes. I'll just pop in and do one. Like I write 4 emails for this client. So like I'll just do one now. And then I would get halfway through it and then I would have to go do something else. And then I would come back, and it was like I was breaking those things up, and I thought I was being efficient by like slotting them into these little breaks. But like for what I do, it actually wasn't. Like that was something that needed more like focus. So I've gotten a lot better at batching. So I've gotten a lot better at like, when I do all 4 of these together, I can do it in 2/3 of the time that it takes me, right? Like I think that's one. Social media just, it's not happening. I used to like try to write blogs, and like that's just not a priority. So like that's not happening. I quit some of the groups I was in. Like I was in like a women's group or whatever of like, I just couldn't put the time. Like I was like, I can't show up for this. So I kind of like stepped out of that, and it has gotten really lean. Like my business is very lean. Like I don't have a lot of extra stuff happening. So I think those are all things I've done. I'm trying to think of anything else. I mean, social media is probably the biggest one. Like I don't scroll through stories a lot. Like I haven't been, I kind of forgot how to like do face to camera stories. I have not done one on my new account
That's
yet.
funny.
Because I went so long without doing it. I feel very uncomfortable now. But that is not a priority either. And so I don't touch any of that stuff.
And when something I want people to hear you say is that like you're saying that's not a priority, so I'm not doing it. Like I just think more business owners need to think about like what's a priority for you right now. So like maybe for you, you're like, I'm trying to make it big on TikTok, or like I'm starting my Instagram for the first time and I'm going to focus on this. Emily's not. Emily's focusing on this thing, but you have to like figure out like what it is for you with your season, with your family, and where your business is at. And I think the term priority is good because it's like something can be good for someone and not for someone else, depending on your business type, your season. When you were like making your business more lean, as you said, did you like do journaling or like writing out anything to help you figure out like what needs to be cut, or just kind of happen naturally? I don't know if you're a journaler like me. I'm like, you're not. But
I wish I could tell you I had like this thoughtful process. No, I honestly, it happened because it was literally like, I don't have like, it was such that's when I say like, I put myself in a position, because I think there's things I've wanted to do. I've been in this space for like a while now. Right. And like, I love personal development and professional development and like all these things. And I'd be like, that'd be cool. Oh, that would be nice to do. But like, I didn't have to, so I didn't do them. Yeah, I would say I was just like forced into it. And honestly, it was kind of messy. Like it really was. And then some things I have like deprioritized that now I'm kind of starting to reprioritize. And so that actually I have been actually like mapping out, okay, if I'm going to put more time into marketing, what is that going to look like? How is that going to shift? I'm actually giving myself like time in my calendar, which I had taken out. Like I used to give myself, like, this is when I focus on my things. And that's really gone all to the wayside. And that I am kind of like mapping out and kind of like playing around with my calendar and seeing where it can go.
Yeah. I mean, I love even hearing that it was messy for you. Cause like a lot of people, when they do make big pivots like that in their business, like making something not a priority anymore, it's because like you had something happen in your life that maybe was outside of your control or unexpected even, or maybe it is like your situation of traveling and be like, wait, now I can't make this all work. And does look messier, but can work out being messy. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so Emily, as we close I love this conversation. I feel like I have more questions for you, but we'll stop now. But any like last pieces of advice that you want to leave business owners with who are just like inspired by this conversation or thinking like, I'd love to travel with my family. I know you already gave some advice for that, but maybe anything else, or like, I want to shift the way I'm doing my marketing away from Instagram to something else. Like what kind of final words would you leave us with?
Yes, I think the thing I've learned that I think is worth sharing is just that this is going to sound so trite, but it genuinely is your life and it genuinely is your business. And I think it's absolute. Like, I think most of us don't do the things we really want to do, even if it's quitting Instagram or it's, shifting how you work, or maybe you want to like change the way you do business. Maybe you want to have more passive income, or you want to do more in-person things. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, but we don't do it because, one, it feels like it's going to be hard, and two, it's just a little scary. And we also like have to meet other people's expectations. And so for me, the thing I have learned, there's plenty of people who disapprove of what I am doing. Like, there are plenty of people who judge me for like choices I've made. And I don't care. Like, I really genuinely don't care, because I think if you can, no matter what the decision is, if you can like think through it and know that you're doing what's best for you, what's best for your business, what's best for your family, then that's really all that matters. And it's okay. Like, yes, there are still people who think, like, I had a friend who was like at Spark, and she was like, I kept running into people who were like, oh, what happened to, she was like, she said, would like mention me, and they're like, oh, did she like close her business down? Oh, is she gone? Because I was off of Instagram, and that's the only, right? So like, there are people who think I just fell off the face of the earth, and like, I don't love that. But also, life goes on and business goes on. And I think with like the traveling thing, like on paper, it looks a little nutty, but there's a lot of intention and a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of bank accounts, and like things, like there's a lot of safety nets. And so it isn't just like a big leap. It's supposed to be concise advice, but
this is great. I love it.
Do what feels right. And no, like the whole thing, right? So like we planned this, we're like, if after 6 months, this is terrible, we can come back. Yeah. We have family we can stay with. We can rent an Airbnb in our same town. And like, it's not permanent. And that's the same with your business.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you really want to do it, just try it. Because it's actually, I have found this to be much easier on the whole than I expected it to be.
Yeah. That's beautiful advice that I feel like can speak to people about a lot of different things. Like for me, I'll tell you what it was that once we're done recording, but I just like, as you're talking, I was thinking of something particular I'm working through, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this applies to like what I'm thinking about as a change in life and business. So anyway, I think that's like the advice that like you got to do what's right for you. It's your life and what's right for you and your family, and things can change and isn't permanent. I love that. Okay. Can you tell everyone where they can connect with you? If you want to share your travel Instagram, I don't know if you want to share that. Do you want to? If you want to, you can share that, or in your website and all the things so we can connect with you.
Yeah. So EmilyWritesWell.com. That's my website. At Emily Writeswell on Instagram for now. I don't know.
There's not a lot happening there. What you're doing though, I feel like we want to see what's not happening. Like, I think that's interesting. So go see what's not happening.
Go see that. And then Slow Down Travel More is our travel account, and that is actually one of the priorities I'm trying to like lean into. So it's a lot of work like doing it, but the travel content, I mean, I'm not trying to like monetize it or anything. I just want to share because people really are interested, and I want to have it also to look back on. So at Slow Down Travel More is our travel account.
Awesome. And I'll link to all that in the show notes and to our previous episode we did together. So anyway, thank you, Emily, so much. This was wonderful. Thanks for sharing all of your experience with us so we can learn and do some more things we want to. Thank you.
Yay. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you for listening to the podcast all the way to the end. I appreciate you being here. And if you enjoyed this episode, then I want to invite you to check out my website template shop too. Over on ElizabethMcCravey.com, you'll find show it website templates that are easy to use, strategically designed, and created to help you make more money from your website. Maybe your current website is really boring, maybe it's a challenge to update, and maybe it's even the thing you feel like is holding your business back. Your website needs to be strategically and intentionally designed in order for it to convert your viewers into raving customers, and that's exactly what my templates do. These templates are designed to be SEO friendly on the back end, not just pretty, and also strategic with all the strategies I teach on this show, and they are easy for you to set up all by yourself. So shop them at elizabethmccravey.com/shop and come join thousands of happy customers using these templates. And as an added perk, you can use the code BBPodcast at checkout to get 10% off your template as a thank you for being part of the podcast fam. Again, that's BB Podcast for 10% off any template over on ElizabethMcCravey.com. Also, if you loved this episode, leaving a rating and review for the show on wherever you're listening or sharing it with a friend is a great way to support this podcast. Thank you again for listening, and I'll be back next week with a new episode.